Hey everyone, it's Dragon Rider, and we have even more cards getting all of the neutrals getting revealed over the next couple of days. So these first set of cards, we had one revealed via an article or website, another couple revealed via a YouTube video from Language Hacker with Housewife in there as well. And then the rest were actually put into the Hearthstone Discord. So let's take a look at these. The first one we're going to look at is this legendary Flame Behemoth. And it is 6 mana, 4/5 mech with battle cry, get 2 random magnetic mechs. They cost 2 less. Now, I am a big fan of mechs and magnetic, honestly, no matter what format it is, and I have definitely enjoyed things like Mech Mage, Mech Paladin, and Mech Paladin I even took to a 12-win run in one of the previous Heroic Tavern Brawls, so definitely a huge fan of mechs and mech decks. This one is super cool. I think it's really interesting that it is specifically 2 magnetic mechs. Also means we're going to be getting more mechs. For the stats on its own, it does seem slightly expensive, right? 6 mana for a 4/5, but you're getting 2 other mechs and they're getting discounted, so this seems really, really good. Then next we have Mecha Leaper, an epic 3 mana 2/2 mech with magnetic, and Death Rattle, give a friendly mech +2/+2 and this Death Rattle. So we're kind of seeing that Leaper effect coming from Battlegrounds and kind of coming into Standard, that kind of Death Rattle jumping and leaping from one minion to another. For Standard, though, I'm honestly not really sure how well this is going to be utilized. It is a Death Rattle, and it does specifically have to go to another mech. The similar, I guess, type of effect that this reminds me of is very similar with the minion that did something very similar for Silverhand Recruits. It's a little bit easier, I think, to pull off mechs just because there's a lot more mechs. Silverhand Recruits are even more specific, but I'm still not sure how well this will get to kind of chain and leap. And then we have Razor Scale. It's another epic. It's 3 mana, 2/4 dragon. Cards can't cost less than 2. Now, in the Language Hacker video, he also did state that, there was confirmation. This applies to cards that even start at less than 2. Their cost will show as 2 mana, and this is kind of an aura effect. So while this is on the board, those cards will cost 2. And that cost won't go back to its normal, like 0, for example, until Razor Scale is off of the board. Now, this does seem like a very powerful effect and kind of counterplay, but honestly, I just feel like for Standard, we've seen effects like this, and even aura board type effects, they just don't see a ton of play in top competitive decks. They don't really have the kind of staying power and strong effects that people really want. Now, if you can pair this with something that maybe makes this unable to be targeted by hero powers or spells from your opponent, you can maybe keep it on board a little bit longer. But I don't know, it just does not seem like it's quite enough to actually have a lot of lasting effect. All right, then for all of the cards that we saw from the Hearthstone Discord, we have the first one here, Watcher of the Sun, 2 mana, 2/3 with Battle Cry, get a random holy spell, and Forge also restores 6 health to your hero. So now we're starting to see a little bit more Forge cards. This is great. I like the Forge mechanic. I think it's going to be pretty interesting and create some really cool kind of interactions and synergies. And I'm really excited to actually see what different Forge abilities they have. Initially, right off the bat, restoring 6 health to your hero kind of makes me think of Priest, especially with the getting a holy spell. So this is definitely something that I could see like Priest utilizing. But maybe there are other decks or other classes that might want to use this. Getting a random holy spell does mean that it's just going to be a holy spell from like standard if you're playing in standard. And it's not going to be like a discover, so it's not going to follow any of those rules. So for example, if a Death Knight, like let's say Blood Death Knight wants to play this, you can play it, the battle cry will go off, and you will still get a random holy spell. It might be a priest holy card, it might be a paladin holy card, who knows? It'll just be something random like that. I don't know. I think this is really going to take a certain type of deck to see play. This is definitely not something that like every deck is just going to want to run. The next one we have is Careless Mechanist. It's a 3-mana 4/5. After you draw your second card in a turn, destroy this. This to me kind of seems like just a heavy hitting body that you might want in like an aggro deck. And oftentimes I feel like there's definitely going to be some turns where you're not drawing additional cards. Aggro decks do want to draw some, but they don't always have it, and you're not going to be able to draw every single turn. So there might be some use for this in standard, but I feel like this might be better utilized in some of the other formats or modes. Standard, it might see a little play here or there in 1 or 2 decks, I'd imagine. All right, then next up we have Sharp-Eyed Seeker. It is a 3-mana 3/3 beast with Battle Cry. If there is a card in your deck that didn't start there, draw it. So, pretty interesting. Any deck that utilizes putting stuff into your deck that didn't start there, sure, cool. Honestly, the like kind of immediate thing that seems really easy that we're already seeing in standard some is the photo from photographer Fizzle. People are kind of playing that a little bit in like some Demon Hunter decks, taking that snapshot, that photo snapshot of their hand, and then that gets put in the deck. So I guess you could play this and then get to draw that, that snapshot. Sure. Not really sure that that's kind of the case, but that's the current case that I see for sure. There are some other like priest tools like Drown or something like that you potentially could, use Drown, put a minion into your deck from your opponent's side of the board, and then use this neutral minion to then pull that from your deck. Something like that. Again, this is yet another card that I could see being utilized in maybe like 2 decks or so, but this is not going to be a deck or a card that is put into like every deck. Next up we have Inventomatic. It's a 2-mana 2/3 mech. Whenever you magnetize a minion, give it +1/+1. Again, this kind of concept and the magnetizing and getting stats feels very much like Battlegrounds, kind of coming over to standard. Not opposed to it. I do enjoy Battlegrounds as well as standard, but for standard doesn't quite have the same effect, I think, as it does in Battlegrounds. You're really going to have to utilize this, and maybe it's okay to just get like 2 effects off of this for standard, but this is kind of, again, one of those cards that I don't think is going to be used in like every deck. You really want to be kind of capitalizing on the magnetize and playing this in a more mech heavy deck. Speaking of mechs though, the next one here, Containment Unit, is a pretty hefty mech. It's a 7-mana 6/6 mech with magnetic, and Death Rattle, summon a random 8-cost minion. Wow, this one actually seems pretty impactful. It is a little bit hefty at that 7 cost, but maybe if you can actually pull this from one of those previous cards that you get a couple of magnetic mechs, and they cost 2 less. Playing this for 5 for a 6/6, maybe getting to magnetize it on to something else, and then also having that Death Rattle seems pretty nice for mech decks. Now, silence is a thing, and that feels like it definitely can kind of wreck this card, especially if it's magnetized onto something. We'll see how much silence there ends up being, but I do think that this is definitely a very strong magnetic card for mech decks. Then we have Mechanome Guide. It's a 4-mana 3/4 mech with Battlecry, discover a spell. Forge, it costs 3 less. So pretty interesting, another forge card here. So if you forge this, you're going to hover it over your deck. You're going to pay 2 mana, and then it's going to upgrade to the 4 mana 3/4 forged version that says Battlecry, discover a spell. It costs 3 less. This one is pretty interesting. I do think that this, in a way, kind of reminds me of the Nerubian that a lot of undead decks play, but maybe kind of a mech version of it. It does still have that little requirement to make the spell that you discover cheaper, but you absolutely can just play this as a mech to discover a spell. And I don't even think that that's terrible. I think this is a decent, solid card on its own. Next one we have is Melted Maker, a 3 mana 3/3 elemental. After you forge a card, get a copy of it. This one's kind of cool, potentially getting a copy of that forge card, whatever you're forging. And especially if you are spending the mana in a turn to forge a card, getting an extra copy of it seems like something you would definitely want to be doing. I don't know if you want to run this to get extra copies of other things, though. It kind of seems counterproductive to include a card that you then have to put on the board in order to get copies of stuff. So I'm not really completely sold on this one. But I guess if you're really trying to go for forge stuff and you want to get a whole bunch of extra copies, then cool. Then here we have a very interesting card. There's kind of a lot going on with this one. XB488 Disposal Bot. It's a 5 mana 3/2 mech. Battlecry, deal 5 damage randomly split among all enemy minions. And forge, gain lifesteal. So if you forge this, you do have to spend the 2 mana to forge it. And then you pay the 5 for it. You're going to deal 5 damage, split up. You're going to gain 5 life. Okay. This, to me, seems kind of only good in certain cases, only certain scenarios. Seems a little bit costly for the stats that it's getting. And especially if you do have to pay the extra 2 to get the lifesteal. Also, dealing 5 split among all enemies is either going to require maybe something that has 4 or 5 health and is the only minion on board for you to clear it, or you're going to want to play this against maybe boards that have gone a little wide with smaller minions like 1/1s or 2/2s or something. It still seems a little bit costly. I definitely think that in terms of like removal, there are much better 5-cost removal cards for many classes. And maybe this can be utilized for mechs, but it doesn't quite seem like it is maybe the greatest. I think, honestly, if there's some sort of mech that you can play that has rush or something like that, honestly, even playing Ziliax instead of this probably is going to be better in a lot of cases. This just does not seem that appealing on its own so far. And the last one for now is a Time Lost Proto-Drake. It's a 4 mana 4/5 dragon with taunt. Says, when you draw this, add a random dragon to your hand. So this is kind of interesting because you do get a random dragon. It's got taunt and 4/5 for 4. Seems okay. You're also getting, that extra body. But it does kind of tell your opponent that you drew this. If they see you draw a card and then all of a sudden another card gets added to your hand, it kind of telegraphs what you just drew. The one downside to that is that it does mean that hand space is even more important for you to pay attention to at any point in the game. Because if you have 9 cards in your hand and you draw this, you're going to miss out on that added random dragon to your hand. Yeah, okay. We'll see if there's some sort of deck that actually can utilize dragons or can use this effect a little bit better. What do you think of any of these cards? Are any of them impressive to you? Or are you excited about any of these? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much to everyone who has been leaving comments on my videos for this card reveal season. I appreciate you so much. Thank you. And if you haven't, please check out this video looking back at some of the previously revealed cards. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.